Okay, so looking at the stuff you've already UV'd, have a look now. Okay, so pretty much the same things that have been going on throughout this. You know, you've got the right approach to stuff so far. Just there's a lot of uneconomic unwrapping is what I call it. I see a lot of evidence of just leaving the automatic unwrap as it is, though you know we need to be obviously looking at our UVs and thinking how can I make this as economic as possible. Um, and also when it comes to anything like this, do one, unwrap this, duplicate it around because you've got all like a lot of the same plants going on. So if you had to kind of unwrap each one of these individually, obviously you'd pull your hair out. So anything you're duplicating, you know, it's cool doing this, but when you come to actually UV it, just delete all but one of them, UV it, duplicate it. Okay, so let's have a look at stuff. Also, I'd keep stuff if it's going to be part of the same object. I'd keep it all together. So like all these handles, the lights, the license plate, probably even the wheels. Yeah, I could probably keep all this stuff together. So I'll do this first. I'll do all like the truck, into the whatever you call it, the cockpit of the truck. So I'll grab all these first. And like I said, it's looking okay. And yeah, technically, yeah, the checkerboard is good, but you always want to be economic with your texturing. You always want to make sure that when you're taking this into either Photoshop or Substance Painter, you are giving yourself the most to work with. You give yourself something easy to work with. You are avoiding anything that might cause you problems in the future. So what I'm going to do is grab everything to do with the canopy. I don't know what it's called. And just isolate it on its own. So we're just working with this. Just working with this. And we might even be able to bring in the other parts of the truck into one text sheet because that might be a good idea. Because also, if we deal with a lot of separate UVs, they will automatically or kind of like naturally take up a lot of space, which is never great. So if we start to go through and proper UV these, we could probably take down that number to something much more manageable, so we can fit other stuff into the texture sheet. Okay, so I'm also looking at this and thinking, okay, what would be either constructed together, or if this is, you know, how would this be like a physical toy? How would this physical toy look? So I'm just gonna look at some. Just gonna keep my eye out for any sort of errors in the mesh as well while I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit it with an automatic unfold at first. Boom. Just so I get everything laid out. And I can start to think, okay, what bits can be brought together, what bits can be sewn together. I'll do the big bits, which I'm like, okay, those are good on their own. I can basically ignore those for the time being. Those would definitely be the windows. All these quote-unquote glass sections, they're all good on their own. I'll move them to the side because they're just going to be a flat plane as they are anyway. They don't need to be sewn on with anything else. You know, if this was you know, this being a toy, this is either going to be a separate bit of plastic, kind of like all like constructed together, or this would be a sticker or something like that. Here, look at you. Oh, it's just watching a video. Uploading a video of these. Yes, these will be like a sticker or something. So you can treat these as a separate thing. Now I'm also kind of seeing the little supports around the window as separate objects, or at least things that we can have as a separate UV off on the one side. Again, just to kind of make it a little bit neater. So, and also because these were automatically projected, these have all been brought in as like 3 separate pieces per support, per beam. So I can sew them together in their own little cluster, their own little group, and then bring them somewhere else. So I'll bring these up here. These are like my little window section. Right, okay. Maya, please. Maya, let's draw on this. Oh, okay, this has got a weird long name to it. Let's give this a better name. Yeah, there we go. Right. So let's grab this bit. Have it. Okay, I'm gonna just again. What I'm gonna do is just separate everything off at first into their own little areas, and then sew them together. Because again, what I'm gonna do is, as I've always said, I'm gonna clear this space of anything, and then refill it with the stuff I've basically fixed up and UV'd. That's always been the way I work, keep it nice and neat. Now these corner pillars, I'm actually going to look at these corner pillars again in a sec, because I think the shape of those is a little bit weird. Especially for a toy. They're a little bit weird, because think about the size of it. So each one of these, like these are almost like a triangle. Like that. And I get why you've done it. I actually get why you've done it, but I think we could actually bring these corner pieces in a little bit. So these bits on both sides. Bring these in a little bit. So it's not quite as, because it's almost a triangle inside here. So I'm just going to bring these back a little bit. And I'm going to bring these ones in a little bit. Like that. That way this support is much more of a square shape. That's a little bit nicer to work with. Now I don't have to really UV anything. I might need to just hit these with an Unfold 3D maybe, but I don't need to re-UV anything because all I've done there is just move UVs or move geometry. I've not actually made anything new. Okay, so these bits, I've got to sew these together. That's simple. So find the center one, sew them together. Sew them together. Cool. So now I've got all my supports together, so I'll kind of just put them. If they're not necessarily arranged perfectly as well at the minute, I'm just kind of getting them in a position where I'm like, okay, these are all my supports. This bit here, and I could even go through and do that. What's it called? Straighten UVs for each one of these as well. Just again, just to make sure these are as straight as we can get them. So with those selected, straighten UVs. There we go, nice and straight. Okay, right. So done those. I'll just make sure they're all put together. These lights. Okay, so I got all these lights, and I'll do the same. I'll do the same thing on these. Now again, what I've got to think about with this is, what will these be made of? Are these going to be stickers, or are these going to be like shiny plastic or something? I've just got to think of how I'm going to approach these. Now again, keeping this very simply, I could just merge all these together. Unfold 3D them and leave them like that, because any sort of stretching you're going to see on the inside. You're not going to see the stretching on the front of the face. Like that. There's no stretching there. There might be some stretching on the inside. Maybe. Do that on the other one as well. Because with something like this, geometrically, it's going to be very, very simple. Because if you think about something that is that size, made for a kid, you did call it plastic toy. Yeah, plastic toy. This is, it's a kid's toy. Kids' toys are generally very kind of like geometrically basic. They don't have a lot of detail on them. They're more color or anything else. So, you could keep these very, very simple. Keep pressing H by accident. Like that. Also, I'm doing these like this, but I might end up thinking, you know what, I'm going to re-UV something later on, because now that I'm looking at it, I could probably do a better job. Something simple like this, I might need to approach it differently. But first, just laying them out like that, that's totally cool. Okay, looking around. Okay, so again, I'm going for all the big, or at least the simpler stuff, the complete stuff, like this little piece here, which is these two pieces, or these few pieces here. Some bits over there. the license plate. You know, I could put the license plates together like this and just have two bits, front bit and back bit. But I just want to make sure that I'm bringing down that plate, just like I was doing with the canopy before. This, like, because we've got 102 faces at the minute. This has been going down, but 102 UV shells. We want to bring that poly count, or that UV count, way down, as much as we can. And a way of doing that is looking at, with the automatic projection, all these little bits. What do these relate to? How can we sew these back onto something? Pardon me, but so then I can just put these up here. Because they're fine as they are. They're absolutely fine as they are. All I need to do then was just sew those little corner bits on. The door handles, same thing. Let's go up here and do them. So yeah, while I'm working on this, just keep an eye on, and I'll try and kind of remember to point out as I go along, just keep an eye on this as we're going on. It'll get lower and lower and lower to the point where we might be 12 or 15 UV shells, something like that. But while I'm working through this, as I've always said, I'm always thinking about materials, and if there's a separate material, so like maybe this is all like yellow plastic on the body, and then this little kind of like tire protector here is maybe a black plastic. Those would be two different materials. Okay, so this little bit here. Let's just isolate this bit, for instance. Okay, cool. I think we probably just sew these together in like a bit of a strip. No, separate it. Okay, so maybe these two handles, because they're a relatively simple shape, there's still a little bit of complexity to them. Even, even with the way, sorry, I'm losing my brain a little bit. Yeah, they're relatively simple shapes, but because of the different angles and the fact that you've got this little inset section on the inside, like the fingers would go here. Oh man. There, you've still got a level of complexity, so maybe this thing will be best being just completely broken up, like everything else. Something's interactive. Where is it? Something he's pressing H and I don't know what. So yeah, break all these up into individual chunks and sew these back together, because also we can fix those end guns that we're missing. So perhaps fix that end gun. Of course, there's going to be one on the opposite side. Watch out for those end guns. Okay. So let me just get tools. Go. Now around. Okay, so I've basically got the top part of each of those handles. So that bit and that bit, the top part. And I've broken everything up, like I said, into individual chunks. So everything now is a separate UV. See, the UV shell count's gone way up. And I'm going to sew these back on together in chunks. So this is like a method I keep talking about. Like sometimes it's good to break everything up into individual chunks so that you can control it a lot more. We're taking the basic projection that the automatic projection gives us, but then we're breaking it up so we can actually dictate where these themes are going to be. All we're using the projection for is to get everything laid out nicely and evenly. Okay, so then, and I've laid them out both like this so I can actually do them pretty much at the same time because they're the same object. So I'm going to grab, I'm basically going to continue on and follow round. So I'm just going to go over. So each one of these, do the same thing, and this should take me all the way around to the point where I can't actually sew anything else on. There we go. So nothing else can be sewn onto there. Now the decision for me to make is, do I then start sewing in, say, this direction, going like that, or do I sew on in this direction, going round there? Two different methods to think about. Now for me, looking at this, I think going through the middle, like this. So you're basically sewing, you're going to be sewing around, oh, you kind of, yeah, sewing around like there. Grab these. Neighbours are slamming doors again. And again, same thing, just continue that round until you can't sew anything else on. Like that. So you can see we're starting to get rid of all those white lines and getting left behind is all that is getting left behind is the blue lines, which is good. Okay, so now the smaller bits are left behind as well as some big bits. Right, please. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to sew those bits onto there. Same thing here, sew them onto there. Follow the same thing here. Now, obviously, I don't want to get rid of all the seam lines. I don't want to get rid of all these white lines, because some of these are separation points between, obviously, 2 points that might not be best being, sewn together. Now, I probably always want to be sewing on the outside of something as well. Sorry, let me adjust my monitor. There we go. More kind of like a little display monitor. I think it's a bit funky to look at. There we go. So, yeah. These little faces I just sew onto the bigger face. So these two right here. Sew them on like that. Just follow on along on the other side like that. This face, where did they? Oh, they're there. Okay, so we can, yeah. So there, because I can merge. There, so there. Here, something here. So here I'm just looking at these little little corner pieces, these little quads right here. And do the same on the side. So like as per usual, I'm just looking for all these little bits and I'm thinking, okay, what can I get rid of? Or what's left and how can I use it? How can I bring down that poly shell count? That UV shell count. Okay, so yeah. Like I said, probably just sewing on the smaller bits to the bigger bits, so like that. Some of these bits are getting close to each other, like there. Some of these are getting quite close, so I can deal with that in a sec. Because what I might be able to do as well. Okay, sewing all those together. What I might be able to do, yeah, so actually, yeah, if I sew those, so essentially if I, where am I? There we go. If I sew that bit together, same thing on the other side. So those bits on together, do the same thing here. And then hit this with an unfold 3D. There we go. And for me, that's good enough. You can check the stress line and stuff, and that looks fine. There's a tiny bit of blue, and there's a tiny bit of red, but that's fine. The only reason, the only time it's ever not cool is when you get like super red and super blue. But for me, that's cool. So yeah, that's with the handle bit. Again, a little bit more complex just because even on that small object, you've got a level of complexity because of the little insets you've done on the inside where the fingers would go. But as per usual, what we're doing is just clearing the space. So we'll put those in our little space there. So what's left to do? We've got these annoying little triangles. What are you? Where are you? What are you related to? Okay, so these are the insiders. Okay, so they're dead simple. This little group of four faces here, the little inset where the license plates would be, they can just be sewn on together. Again, choosing the biggest shape and then sewing the other bits onto there. Like that. Like that. There we go. Boom. Done. Perfectly fine, that one. Because I'm not going to keep that onto the main mesh because that's got a pretty big angle change here. I mean, I could sew it on. Maybe I can sew it on later on. But looking at this at the minute, this would suit being a complete separate mesh or a complete separate UV shell, at least for now. So I can, okay, so that's all my peripheral stuff up here. So I'm going to put, this is actually part of the main canopy, the main cockpit. I'm going to put it down here at the left. So this down here is where I'm going to put all my main chassis stuff. I don't know what the word is for this. Okay. YouTube pieces. So again, all I'm doing here is I'm working through these little bits, and I'm looking. Where are you? Oh, you're like annoyingly inside something like that. Oh, okay, you're on the inside of it. Okay, okay. So these little bits here, they're off. They're part of something there. So I'm just gonna put them to one side because I know I'm gonna need them in a sec. Oops. Okay. Little bits here. What are you? What are you related to? I think you're okay. You're related to the inside there. Okay, so these are related to the inside here as well as like little bits. Okay. So again, what we want to do is make sure all these little bits are taken care of because these are part of bigger elements. And again, it's just that whole thing about they are just off from one of the projection angles, so they get put in their own little kind of like space. So I'll deal with those separate as well. Because I'm not working on the bits that would relate to these just yet. Okay, so they're my little bit sections. So put it over here. So I can come back to that section in a bit. Okay, let's have a look at what's going on here. Okay, so we've got all these bits here, these little strips, and these are all related to this little grill, this little radiator section here. So this is another really simple one to do, or to fix up, because again, what we've got here is something similar to what was going on with the pillars on the canopy. I can basically do the same thing because we've got these little rectangle shapes kind of sticking out, rectangular shapes, cubic shapes kind of sticking out, which are basically the same things as these. So we can do the same thing. What I can do is just grab the front, because this is the front facing shape. I can grab this. I can grab the edges on this and basically sew bits on together. Because looking at this as well, looking on the inside, all these edges where like this kind of shape meets the back face here, they're all, there's a UV edge across there, so that should be very, very simple for me to do. So I'm going to do is basically grab all the edges there. Moving so. Don't worry about the shape yet. Okay, so I've got them. They're curved, or they're looking like that because the whole front is slightly curved, like that. So they're going to be slightly curved. However, if we hit them with a bit of Unfold 3D, they straighten out. So Unfold 3D will do that. And then I can hit them with that straighten UV as well. Boom, they're nice and straight. So then they're lovely to work with. Okay, so I can put these over here. These are part of my main shell. What we got left are these two pieces. They're just, or these three pieces. Oops. That's the top and bottom, as well as the back face of this kind of inset. Now, we did just deal with the end pieces there. So we can start to sew this on together. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to straighten these two curvy bits first, before I sew them onto this. Like that. And then if I sew them on, it'll be a bit neater. Like that. Like that. Because again, I'm looking at this inset and I'm thinking, well, this is all pretty kind of like uniform in shape. There's nothing really crazy going on here. So I can keep all this inset the same. Now let's have a look at these end pieces. What have we got? Are we missing anything? We're only missing those three faces on that side, and then probably those three faces on that side. And those are these two pieces that we're just looking at from these little bits. So we can sew those on. How are we going to sew those on? It's pretty much up to you again. Looking at this, I think it'd be nice if they actually just sew it onto the end here. Like that. And like that. And again, we can come in there and fix up those little shell sections, or little triangle sections there. And then let's just see what happens when we hit this with a straighten UV. Okay. Not without going in there and properly changing some stuff up, it isn't the best result. But that for me is perfectly fine. Again, that becomes one solid UV shell. Very, very nice. So right there, we're bringing our poly count or our UV shell count way down. And we're starting to diminish this little group of little bits here. Okay, so I think the main big portion of this UV will be taken up by obviously the outside chassis section. And then everything else will just be like little sections. But even there, you can think about, okay, well, you've got this little section underneath here. Now, are you going to keep this the same material as everything else, or are you going to have this be a different material? Because some trucks have got, some lorries have got like little black protective plasticky sections underneath this section. So you know what do you want to, how do you want to approach that kind of stuff? I think the doors could probably be on their own, because obviously you look like you've already kind of modeled in a shape around those. So we can actually use that to our advantage. Okay, so let's continue on with that. I think I mouse needs to update something wrong with it. Like with these little bits. Okay, so what about these two bits? What are these? What are these two bits? Okay, they're the little back of the chassis section, so I'll put those over here. What are you two? You are... Okay, so it's back there. This is like part of the door section. These little faces there. So what I'm going to do is grab these and just move them. I'll put them down here for my door bits. What are you? Are you both my door sections as well? Yep, these are also part of... See, no, they're not part of the door. They're part of the chassis at the back there. What are you? Okay, that's the inside of my tire well. So I'll put them over here. These are going to be part of my tire well. Yes, I'll put these over here. These are going to be part of that section, which is technically part of my chassis. So I will get my chassis down here, I guess. Chassis stuff down. Okay, what are these bits? Okay, that's part of the chassis. Wheel well. Okay, a wheel well section there. So wheel well. Oh, you're there. Okay, so that's part of my door. I'm gonna just, please. There. This is also part of my wheel well. So, my wheel well. There. There. Door. Chassis. Wheel well. Wheel well. Yeah. Okay, so I've just separated off a bunch of stuff there into little islands, little groups that I can work with. And again, what I'm doing is just bringing down that poly count, looking at these objects, and a big one is this the inside of the wheel well here, which obviously you got three sections, which are each part is basically facing down a different axis. So these faces up here are obviously predominantly facing upwards. This here is predominantly facing positive X, and these are facing predominantly negative X. However, they're all part of the same shape and they're basically a cylinder. So I can just sew these back together. There you go. So sew them back together. Sew them back together. There. So they're one shape. Again, bringing down that UV shell count. Any internal white edges we can take away because obviously it's part of the same, like a big mesh. You've then got like this section here, which is technically connected to it. But because of the shape, I'd leave this separate because it's going to be a real pain to connect this shape, which is a round shape, half a round shape, an elliptical shape, to this cuboid shape. I'm going to keep those separate. Like that. Because also the interior of there is going to be very basic, so you don't really need much going on. That. What we got here? Yeah, there the things there. Okay, so we can also start looking at these little wheel well sections, the exterior bits. So we've got the interior bits there, and then we've got the exterior bits. So let's bring these over. I think these are also part of. Where are you? Where did I put you? Oh, you're there. Okay, cool. So then we've got the external parts right there. So again, same thing with these. These are pretty much a mirror image of what's going on the inside, except they're a bit smaller. So again, all I'm going to do is just sew these back together like this. Let's try. So again, I'm looking at how these things are connecting together. And there is one bit here which is not letting go. Oh, okay, right. Okay, I see that bit. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I'll leave that alone. What would be left is these bits, these little half round shapes here. Now these are only small. These are, again, comes under the donut shape tree. Basically, we've got a hole on the inside and we've got a hole on the outside. Space on the inside, space on the outside. Whereas this kind of shape here, obviously there is space on the outside, but there's no space on the inside. So these will be a little bit harder to deform because it's basically made up of triangles. Whereas these ones are all quads. Each one of these is a separate quad. So it's going to be a little bit easier to manage. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut up all of these into their own individual chunks and sew them back onto this as per usual. Because these are thin, and these say to me, the reason I'm saying that is because these look to me like a strip that's been bent. These look straight. Oh, these look like they could be straight because they're only very thin. They're not very kind of like deep. So what I could do is actually end up having the exterior and the interior pieces of these wheel wells together. So that one, and again, I'm bringing down that that UV shell number way down. Look at that. There we go. So now they're together. and then I can sew these bits on together like that. Get out a bit of Wonderful 3D. Oh. And now I've got my wheel well sections as well as my interior little wall bit here. They're all ready to go. Oh, we've got a little bit of, we've got a few bits here. So this bit here is technically with the way that it's been UV projected, it's part of this bottom UV here, but it's actually part of the wheel well. So I am just going to cut these bits off, these little wings it's got going on. So I'm freeing these away. I'm going to sew these back onto the wheel well section because that's what they're part of. Wheel well. There we go. Okay, so, and I'm just going to look as a reference on this where these actually kind of line up. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just basically copy that onto each one of these. Boom. That's looking pretty good. And that was a bit of Wonderful 3D. What is this bit? Okay. In the interest of trying to get as fewer white edges on this, I have got this corner here. I'm just going to sew them all together and give it a try. I'm going to sew them on. Cool. Yeah, perfect. That's looking good to me. And you know, we're way less than half of what we started off with in those UV shell counts. Oh, what are you? I've accidentally sewn something on there. I didn't mean to do that. So you can get cut off there. Sewn on something by accident. You're a window. You belong over here. Okay. So now we'll just put these here for now. I'm not laying these in properly just yet. I'm just laying these into the UV sheets in like little groups. And I know that, okay, all these have been UV in some capacity. These have been UV in some capacity. And then I can see, okay, what could I sew together even further? Or how can I arrange these into a better kind of organized state? Okay, so now I've got loads of little bits left behind. Loads of little bits that I can just start to really think about how I'm going to use this sort of stuff. So all this little cluster here is going to be some way related to this, because that's all that's left, obviously. So let's go bit by bit. So I've got these two bits up here, which are these little corner bits here. These little insets. Now that's easy. Now with this, I can have a couple of things to think about. I can think about adjoining these to the outside of the chassis, or I can adjoin these to the inside. Because again, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at stuff and I'm thinking, right, if I was actually building this, would this be a separate piece of geometry or a separate piece of material? But as a 3D modeler, what I'm also looking at is look at the angle change between this face here, or these groups of faces, to these groups of faces. There's a pretty much a 90-degree angle change there. So I'm going to change up those UVs so they're separate. Again, at least for now, we don't necessarily want to commit to anything just yet. So move these away. Grab these. I'm going to move these away. Start thinking about these now. How am I going to UV these? So I've also got to think about how am I going to arrange these into a sheet? What's the best way of doing that? And any sort of sheet, C shape like this is often quite awkward to work with. So I kind of want to avoid anything like that. But do I want to kind of break stuff up to be a different, you know, all these different things I've got to think about. Now, one thing I'd probably avoid doing is sewing these on in some sort of like big loop. This is really not what I want to do. I really don't want to have anything like that. So I've got to think about how I want to approach this. It's easy to arrange this sort of stuff together as well inside the UV sheet because I either can kind of fit stuff together like this, so I've got a little bit of the space in here, but I'm jigsawing them in together, or I could have stuff like this in my UV sheet. Now, what this would obviously allow me to do is have very little UV breaks. So actually, you know what? Yeah, think about that. I'm going to leave them like this and try and deal with my UV sheet to have these in them because this is going to be one solid shape. I'm not going to have any breaks. The only break is going to be here where you've got this little indent. I can treat these as separate pieces because again, looking at an angle change, you know, I can keep these separate just to be safe. So I'm kind of going against what I would normally do with these. I'm making the judgment to keep these separate and in a relatively awkward shape, but I can deal with the way I'm going to use, like put these in the UV sheet later on. Okay, what's left? What have we got left? We've got obviously the exterior of the chassis. We've got the doors. Got all that sort of lovely stuff. So let's have a think about how we can do some of these. Let's look at the doors. Okay. So we've got the doors here, but again, because of that projection, some of these angles have been put together. So I can see that on the doors, we've got these little shapes on the side here. So this little section here. So I'm definitely going to cut them off. So it's just these. And I can sew those back onto this section in a little bit. Okay. Is there anything missing from the doors that I'd want to kind of keep on? Now here's one thing actually. I could start cutting this up to put some of this geometry on the door. So like say here, these two faces. Oops. These two faces right here. I could cut them off and put them on the door. Like let me just silence Discord for a sec. Put the door like this. So again, what I'm doing there is I'm cutting down the amount of polygons I'm using, or the amount of UV islands I'm using. So I'm cutting off these kind of wingy shapes here and sewing them back onto the door. So again, this is another thing that is really good about this process is you're going through and you're actually deciding things on the fly. Well, you get an educated decisions on the fly because I'm thinking, oh well, yeah, I said before I'm gonna keep all these things separate, but now that I'm looking at that, now that I'm looking at how the door's set up, I'm thinking, well, I could probably sew those on together. I mean, there might be a seam here. Maybe there might be a seam here, but we've got to wait and see. This top section we've still got to kind of make a decision about. Obviously, there's no door section there, so unless we treat this section as a door, but it doesn't look like that's been modelled in, so I don't know how to actually approach that too much. But we're sticking with the door, so so we've got these white lines going down the side here on this thin bit. So I'll probably look at it somewhere in this little group of bits here. So what I can do is that's sew stuff on down that line. Yeah, there it is. Okay, but we've got that little corner here, so I'm going to cut that so it doesn't try and bring in a corner. I'll just kind of sew those on one by one, like that. Okay, there's my door. Okay, so you can see how those have been sewn on there. Sewn on there. There, follow that around. What we got? Okay, so we got this section here, wrapping around. So that's obviously going to be those. Okay, so we can try and like see what happens when we sew those on. Where my doors? There, my doors. And I'll do both at the same time just to kind of keep it nice and symmetrical. Okay, so you can see they've been brought on, but they've kind of gone at a weird angle because those were unfolded or projected as a flat strip. So what we can do is sew those on, and then see what happens with an automatic unwrap. Nice. Okay, that automatic unwrap has worked perfectly for them. No distortion, no stress. Cool. And then any sort of internal white edges, obviously, we can sew those out. I'll leave those corners for now. I'll leave those little corners for now. Okay. Is there any other? So what I'm looking at is any white edges on what I would consider being the door itself. Obviously, this white edge here is a separation point between the door and the rest of that surface, so I'm going to leave that alone. So I think that's it for the door, I believe. Okay, so we just, we're gradually getting this stuff down. So actually, I'm thinking this bit here, they're pretty much on their own. If you want to texture them with like a different color, you can do that, or you can attach these to like the main chassis area. But I think these two bits here, these like little crook kind of shapes, they're kind of on their own because that's the recess you've got here in between the door and the chassis. They've just got that separation there between a face on the top and a face on the side. So I'd sew those on. Like that. Yeah, I'll leave them there. What are you? Where are you? Oh, okay. So yeah, we've got these little faces here to do with these little radiator section. These bits in it. So yeah, with these, I think what I'll do is sew them across a broad edge. Like there. And on the other side, do the same thing. Like that. Again, so I'm not sewing them across the small edge because that'll give me just something sticking out the side of my give me like a little awkward shape sticking out the side of my UV, which I don't necessarily want. So if I sew them across a broad edge there, it gives me a nice kind of flush shape. Don't have to worry too much. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's a tiny little face there. So we got a tiny little face here, which I don't really know where to put that. I think actually, you know what, this tiny little face I'm going to put with this inset you've got coming in. With this essentially, with that bit. So it's going to be at the very, very bottom there. The very, very bottom there. There we go. What are you? Okay, you're part of that bit. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll cut you across that angle. Again, like I did with the other side of the door, I'll cut them across that angle just so they can sew on a little bit neater. And I'll sew you onto bits of the geometry. Like thus. Let me look for this piece. There we go. Okay, cool. Yeah. So you can see where they get brought on. Nice, good. Obviously that bit is, oops, that bit is that bit. Nice, good. Now with this little bit here, I'm thinking I could probably do the same thing I've done here. Possibly, yeah. I'm going to sew you on. Like that. I'll do the same thing on this side. Let me just find where those pieces are. UV shell. Get that. Okay. Flush. Sew you on. Okay. Now, why I'm doing that is I'm just thinking about consistency on this section, because I did the same thing with the door. So at least from the bottom side, I'm keeping it nice and consistent. I'm doing the same thing here. There's a top section, because I've still got this little awkward piece here. Okay, so let's have a look. What have we got? Okay, so we still got, okay, these two bits now. So let's put those somewhere up here. And a little bitty section there. These two bits, okay. These two last little awkward bits can very easily be sewn onto stuff because they belong here. So what you can do is actually sew these back onto this section. Like that. Just like that. Okay, so we got rid of them. Because they belong basically to this. Now, me looking at this, what I'm thinking is possibly being able to break some of this up because I'm looking at the surface, but I'm also looking at those angle changes and trying to think about how I could, if I was texturing this, think about different materials, or if I was just thinking about this as a way to keep this nice and economic, like taking away some of that stress. Basically, I'm looking at this section here. You know, I could break this section off, this little grill section, and kind of treat this as almost like what would be like the chrome section of a car or something. You know, it's a separate piece of geometry, separate something. I mean, I could also keep it the same, like connected to all this. It's not actually going to make any difference if I keep this connected. That is purely just a personal preference. So I think I'm going to keep that, just keep this nice and simple, keep that connected. Okay. And I think, again, keeping consistency, what I'm going to do is then continue this on and sew this section onto it. Like that. Get a bit of Unfold 3D. Like that. Again, you can go through and kind of straighten some bits up as well. If you're thinking something might be a little bit too curved. Okay, what we got left, we've got... Okay, so a lot of the hood stuff, a lot of the top stuff up here, I think can be sewn on together the same way we kind of thought about sewing stuff on with the canopy at the back of this stuff. Because we've basically got a roof. Yeah, we've basically got a roof that we can sew on together. So where's my roof section? That's my roof section. Okay. There's my front. Okay, my front section's there. I'm just going to sew that on. Cool. My side section is there. Okay, so here I can start making decisions as well. So a lot of what I'm doing as well is what I would call like making the journey. You know, I'm not necessarily sitting there worrying too much about clicking something and making the next move. I'm just doing something and then analyzing what I've just done and analyzing the effects and thinking, okay, the shape I've just made or the shape this UV has just given me, is that a good shape to have? Can I use that? Should I change it? Okay, I'm thinking for now, I might sew this back on together in a bit, but for now what I'm going to do is cut it off here. Right here. Because what I'm thinking, again, material-wise, is more like like material inside substance or something. Is if all this is going to be one material, like flat plastic or something, then I'm not going to be seeing too much difference. You know, we're not making a realistic truck here. We're not making something which needs proper panel lining or anything like that. So in that case, what I can think about is more about laying stuff out economically, like making sure there's not as much weird shapes that we've got to kind of fit inside this UV sheet and kind of battle with. I'm trying to think of everything around a square shape. If I can fit everything inside a square shape, I'll be happy. Or I can fit as much as I can around a square shape, I'll be happy. and experiment every now and then. So I'm thinking, if I sew all these corners together, what does that give me? Something I'm not a fan of. Okay, so I'll just sew them. Okay. Let's keep those separate and separate. And we've got, is that the back? Okay, so that's the back of it as well. Probably sew that on there to give me that shape. Yeah. Okay, so this is actually interesting. Where's my other piece I've kind of done this with? So if you think of a cube, or if you think of like a basic shape of a cube, it's got 6 sides, or 6 planes essentially. Now we've got a few things in this whole object which are 6 planes. The handles, well, 2 things: the handles and this chassis. Now we're doing something similar with the handles, or I've done something similar with the handles. I've kept like a main body, a main frame, a main face to deal with, and then everything gets attached to that, and we kind of get this little cross shape or an X shape sometimes. And we're kind of getting the same shape here. We've got this main body here, and I'm sewing everything to this. If we just bring in a normal cube into the scene, we get that. So we get that main face, everything is sewed onto it. Sometimes what you'll get is a cube's looking like this, like more of a cross shape, you know, depending on what application and stuff. Same thing here, we've got a main face and we're sewing stuff onto it. So always something good to think about is trying to keep stuff as a, you know, nice simple shape. Our poly count's been, our UV shell count's been decimated as well, which is good. Now we have also got holes and stuff we can put stuff in, like we could put these inside here and stuff. Okay, what we got left? We got the underside here. Oh, we got an angle. An angle down here. So let's just fix that up real quick. Do that. Now again, I'm not adding faces. I'm not like extruding faces, so that clean up there is fine. Check if any other angles. So yeah, so we'll go with the bottom part of the chassis there, which again, you know, I could think about adjoining this to here, edge to this section here, across those edges. Do that. Again, that's bringing down my UV shell count. It's keeping things nice and consistent, keeping things together. It just becomes more. It's the shape becomes bigger in the scene or in the UV sheet. And then I could sew these bits on. You know, if I'm being proper, you know, spicy about it, I could sew these bits on right here, because those sew onto the front there. It was on full 3D. So what I've got there is pretty much the entirety of the frame, besides those side panels here, which I could probably sew on looking at them now. Okay, yeah, okay. So as I'm working through this, I'm sewing stuff together. So I'm seeing the side panels. The side panels could get sewn on right across there. That's a right across here. Come on, grab it. Right across here. Bang, bang. Okay. Yeah. Did I know I was going to do that at the very beginning? No, I didn't. Now again, this is really helpful because the way that you, because this is meant to be a toy, this is now helpful for us to UV stuff very easily, because we're not having to be as pedantic about breaking stuff down into, you know, rubber seam linings and plastic and metal, all this sort of stuff. We can brace up into quite a big shape, again, because this is probably going to be one flat material. And with stuff like stickers and stuff, you can do that with decals. It's dead easy. But now that is, like, again, brought our UV shell count even lower. Definitely keeping my doors separate, because those are a separate thing. So I've just got these little insets here, these things that have been plaguing me for this entire thing. These little bits here. What I could try and do is see how they look being sewn onto there. A little bit of overlap there, which I'm not particularly happy about how that affects the UV, so I'm going to keep those separate. But those can live like inside here or something. So now what's left is these. So there's a little like C-shaped thing I've got here. I was on an iron about before. I think I could probably sew those on. Yeah, but if I follow the seam lines and stuff, and basically just copy that. So if this seam line is coming down here, and cut right there, obviously the same way here, I should just be able to sew these now onto here. Oh, something wasn't cut. There we go. Sew these back into here. Like that. Look at that. And then we got rid of a little bit more. Cool. Again, hit it with a bit of Unfold 3D. Awesome. So yeah, gradually going through and breaking stuff up. Again, the like UV shell count's coming down. What have we got left? I think that's everything unfolded, isn't it? Okay, so we've got the doors. We've got this little inset for the license plate. Okay, so everything's kind of been unfolded now. Yeah, the only awkward shape here is this. Is these little bits here, but we can deal with those. Again, those are probably going to be very, very flat, so it doesn't really matter about if we have to distort them. But let's start kind of organizing this. Okay, so one trick I can do just to make sure this is aligned to the grid, because this looks like it's slightly rotated off angle. If I just select a straight line, like the middle line especially of our object, come into our tools. Oh, sorry, it's up here, isn't it? It's in modify. Straighten shell. So I need to have that center line there because it's going to straighten against this line. Straighten shell. It then straightens the entire shell so that this line here, or the line you've got selected, is basically straight with the particular angle it's facing, either going to be X or Y. So in this case, X. Okay, so I'm going to put that at the bottom. Again, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to scale this up. I'm going to try and scale this up a little bit to fit this whole section as much as I can. So scale, scale, scale. Looking at both sides here, trying to bring those up to the edges of that border. What I did notice in your initial UV as well is you had something draping over one of the UV edges. Okay, so I've did that. This does mean that I'm going to have to do a pixel density change on everything else because I've just scaled this, so everything else is going to be slightly different. So with this selected, I'm going to pixel density get, and I'm going to set that to everything. So it's not a massive difference. And now what I can do is start to arrange stuff. Because this is now giving me a ton of space that I could probably put my carriage in the same sheet. Maybe. We don't know just yet. But if I start arranging this, I can then get a good idea. So I'm going to try and really utilize as much of this awkward space down here as I can, because we have got a few little shapes and stuff. So I'm hopefully going to fill that up as much as I can. So I'm going to start off with these two bits. So I'm going to put them in here. Actually, I'm going to. Okay. You two. Can you fit in there nice and tight? Yeah. Okay. These two bits, which are the like little radiator sections, they can fit in there perfectly. Look at that, nice and snug. And then we've got this section of the radiator which can fit in. Oh, it's just so I'm just going to I'm going to scale it down the smallest bit. Literally just, I'm breaking my rules a little bit, but I'm just bringing that down so it fits inside there. It's a little bit naughty of me, but that's fine. Space there. Okay. I'm okay with scaling that down a little bit because it's also like an interior section. We're never gonna, you're never gonna put text inside here, so I'm fine with that. Okay, this bit here. What if I just sewed this onto the interior of that bit? So if I scale this down, because this bit here is this little hole here. So if I just sew that on the inside, and then hit that with a 3D. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I've just taken down an island. So again, even during like the phase where I'm arranging stuff into the UV sheet, make sure I'm recording my cut mic. So even though I'm recording stuff, arranging stuff in the UV sheet, I'm still like, maybe I can actually sew that on or something. So literally just taking that one bit, because again, it's dead flat. I don't really need that section to be separate. Can I put these inside here? Because I've not got really many strips left. So can I fit these inside here? Yes, I can. Oh, I can do straighten UV on these. Straighten UV. There we go. Now what I am doing here is arranging these very close to each other. If you were working on a low resolution texture, you would possibly get some bleed in between these two. So if you work on like a 2048, like a high resolution texture, that'd be perfectly cool. 1024, you might be risking some. But one thing we can do with this, yes, it is a toy truck. This is going to be like a basic texture stuff. But if you work at a high resolution, you can put those really nice like scratches, like them scratches that just have that you appear on plastic. Them like kind of like roundy kind of brush marks, or where it's been kind of like picked up and smashed around because obviously it's a kid's toy and stuff. So working on a high resolution for this is cool. Okay, so we got. Let's go for the license plate. To bring everything closer, because my camera's bugging me a little bit with this jumping around. I want to know what's going on with it. Something wrong with my mouse. Okay, the license plates. Let's put those somewhere. Let's put them there. License plates go there. Door handles. Let's put them here and just a little bit. Like that. Actually, I'll put it back here. Let's put it there. So I'm really being a bit pedantic about some of this arrangement. It's good to get stuff nice and close together, but you have got to think about what's going to happen to these low resolution textures, or if texture in general. Is there going to be some bleed? Okay. Let's see the lights can be brought together. Put them here. Bring the lights over here. Bring the lights down. And I'm not changing the scale of anything else, unless it's like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. I'm just squashing bits in. See how I can utilize this space as much as I can. There we go. That's nice. Oh yeah, you're right. That was so. I think I probably put all these bits at the very bottom right here. I think for now I can leave all this lower space alone. I can start filling up some of this upper space. Again, trying to keep it in my lower half. Because if I'm able to keep everything pretty much below 0.6, then I've got all this section up here, as well as any space I can recommend down here for the other bit of the, for the truck bed, for the next part. Also, whenever arranging stuff, if you've got two things that can kind of like jigsaw in together like this, always do that kind of thing. I always do that kind of thing. Right, these I'm going to leave till last because they're really awkward. And my doors, I will bring it in. Well, I can do this thing on them as well. I can select an edge and that's right. No. Just a straight shell. There we go. Grab this over. Rotate around. Select that edge again. Do the same edge as I've just done. Straighten shell. There we go. Okay, so on my windows now. I don't think I need to. So again, what I'm going to do is just do the same thing. Grab all those edges, straighten tissue. Oh, no, no. Ooh. Why they're sewing. The UVs instead. So for some reason it's sewing the shell line together. That's weird. Okay. Oh, it's doing that thing again. It's jumping around. Okay. Okay, I'm going to break this line a little bit. So I'm going to encroach onto 0.6 a little bit, but not that much, because all I've got to do basically is like just arrange stuff. And I'm going to keep my window sections together, just so that everything's kind of, together. And then I go, now with these, because they're going to be probably just a flat whatever, probably just jigsaw these in like this. So yeah, perfect. Grab you. So I'm seeing the angle of this kind of piece, and I'm seeing the angle of this piece, and obviously they're actually related geometrically. So if I just kind of keep those together like that. Awesome. Right, so that's all that section done. Pretty much think about doing the exact same thing to this. How long has it been recording? An hour and 15. Okay, I'm not going to do the bed. I'm going to kind of like, I'll let you think about doing that yourself. But if you could get these two bits in the same UV sheet, that'd be really, really good. That'd be very, very useful. But yeah, that's how I'd unwrap the canopy, the chassis, the whatever you call this bit. Basically the exact same process here. Thinking about those areas, well, watch out for those Engons, because I see Engons all over the shop. I'm going to rename this because it's just giving me bad. Got it? Yep. Yeah, watch out for those Engons. Got Engons there, and then obviously it'll be the same on the other side. Oops. Yeah, watch out for those angles, like those big 90-degree angle changes. You could probably put a seam across there and think about, especially for like this bit, for instance, having this kind of all this inset be its own UV kind of chunk. And then sew these bits onto the outside. So show those like that. Okay, and then something like that. So you get what I mean. So you're breaking it up into little chunks like that. Any sort of like recess where it's a cube or some sort of like square inset like you've done here, making it like this little kind of shape. Yeah, okay.